Greetings and bienvenue crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Why is this the classic alien depiction? Where did this idea come from and how true is it?
It probably came from MKULtra. People who were abducted were basically kidnapped by the CIA and put on drugs, so they were hallucinating about these guys in white outfits with masks performing drug and torture experiments on them in some hidden creepy lab with tons of lights. In their deformed memories, they see them as gray slim aliens with big heads and black eyes. These abductions happened mostly between the 60s and 70s. The targets were probably part of some groups considered problematic for the government. Movies use the alien trope to hide the dark truth.
Good theory. However, wouldn't these people remember their abductions? Most abductees claim that their abductions were done by some technology beyond our understanding. I'm guessing the CIA could just chloroform someone and put him in a van.
This is actually believable. To add on to that, maybe the drugs that the patients were on gave them a more metaphysical view of the ones doing the experiment. As in, they appeared like that not just because of the drugs, but because that representation of a soul is closest to the wavelength that the ones doing the experimenting were on, either at the time or because that's just how they are.
Only abductions and cattle mutilations are done by the government to demonize extraterrestrials. The 9 contact experiences are most likely genuine extraterrestrials. There's a lot pointing to Greys actually existing. The abduction Greys are either animatronics or agents in suits.
For all of the attention the Greys and reptilians get due to do pop culture and nutty conspiracy stories, I'm surprised the mantids never caught on with the masses, especially now that they're seen encountered just as much as the Greys now. Nah, it's not MKUltra shit. There are factions of the CIA that are definitely in cahoots with some aliens, though, as Grush already implied through his interview.
Well, some other people said it has to do with that Aleister Crowley entity, and that they are demons. But I think the most probable is that MKUltra Bull. Demons had tons of different forms in history. The most usual are strange chimeras of wild beasts. So even if some people depict them as big-headed creatures, it's not a particular universal rule. Some people said that demons can look like anything according to your subconscious.
Why is this the classic alien depiction? Where did this idea come from, and how true is it? It isn't the classic alien depiction. Prior to the late modern period of world history, aliens were typically believed to simply be humans who lived on other planets. Once science began to advance, and with the onset of evolutionary theory, that conception of human aliens began to change. This where you start to see non-humanoid aliens appearing in media. For example, consider the insectoid aliens in the 1902 film Le Voyage dans la Lune. In contrast to these scientifically inspired non-humanoid aliens, you also had the little green men depictions. This idea itself goes back even further in time as a depiction of mythical magical entities that are entirely unrelated to the concept of extraterrestrials. This channel is the germ that embedded modern aliens with their spiritual aspects. Greys in particular have their roots in the works of H.G. Wells, whose squid-like Martians in his War of the Worlds kept grey-like humanoids as livestock. Another story by Wells called Man of Year Million introduced grey-type humanoids as a future evolution of humanity. These depictions were brought to the forefront with Orson Welles' broadcast of the H.G. Wells story. Within the public consciousness, these two images were amalgamated into the pop culture image we know today, which was taken by and ran with by various media.
Greys are misidentified owls. Insectoids and reptilians are misidentified insects and lizards. How does this happen? Some people become paralyzed during sleep, and those same types of people self-hypnotize driving late at night. Their sense of time changes. They feel like many hours go by despite it being only seconds. And they return to full consciousness confused with memories of owls, insects, and reptiles. It's almost always owls. Now in ancient history, shamans understood this and interpreted these visions as owls, insects, and reptiles, and myths and legends grew about these animals. Later they became enshrined as symbols of deities, always associated with sleep. What modern techniques in brain imaging will discover is that these experiences are a type of hallucination due to the effect I previously described. Those same people are very suggestible, and easily hypnotized, so an entire folklore of alien abduction has grown around the experience largely because it muddles the issue around UFOs, which are secret test vehicles and plasma weapons and natural plasma effects due to strange conditions. A lot of UFOs are seen over desert, where cool and hot air mix rapidly.
It is very true, but people are misinformed as to what it actually is that they are looking at. Credo Mutwa was an African priest who claims that he was part of an abduction over 50 years ago. He mentions that gray aliens don't actually look like the stereotypical drawings. What people are actually seeing is the alien suit. A skin-tight suit with black goggles that covers their whole body. Think Spider-Man's suit from the cartoons. They wear this suit as a form of germ protection. It is like a plague mask that wraps the whole body. The black eyes are just the goggles of the suit. Under the suit they look very different. They have a mouth, a nose, ears, pupils, etc. Sometimes they wear the suit by itself, and to a person seeing it for the first time it looks like a naked alien. Sometimes they wear clothing over it like a jumpsuit with pockets. This is not the first time a person mentions this. Travis Walton is another one who went through abduction many decades ago and said the same thing.
As I understand it, Betty and Barney Hill got that ball rolling, with some theories being that they got their visual depiction influenced by an episode of The Outer Limits called The Bolero Shield. Now, around the same time, abductee reports are more likely to be a Nordic-type alien, especially in Europe. The grey-type sittings became more popular in North America, and believed to be owing to popular media produced in the US, the grey type began overtaking the Nordic type in European abductions. Belief is split. Skeptics believe it is, as always, people being influenced by popular zeitgeist during sleep paralysis and night terror episodes. And when dreaming or undergoing hypnosis, their brains are more likely to supply what they think they should be seeing. Among believers, naturally, there's a far more varied response. Some believe that there are just different races of aliens who visit us, with some going so far as to believing they are either at war with each other or part of a galactic federation, not mutually exclusive either. Others that the Greys merely used mind powers or technology to appear as the Nordic type to put people at ease, and as people are more willing to accept things that don't look like us, they are letting the masquerade slip. Basically, pick your crazy out of a hat, whatever suits you best.
I went on a drug spree where I did psychonautical, astral, and telepathic pursuits towards the secrets of nature and extraterrestrial life and the evolutionary potential of consciousness and life. I met the Greys as well. I encountered them several times over the span of a few years, but I had already achieved the capability to spiritually project myself into interdimensional space before I met Grey intelligences. I was practicing something like shamanic yoga, trying to tap into the primordial essence of life, which at the time I equated to a feminine intelligence of primordial nature. What do you know? Such an intelligence exists within the body, sleeping at the end of the spine, the Kundalini energy. It's basically the brain tapping into perception of its energy bodies and can transition its consciousness between layers of energy within the molecular fields of the mind and body. I'm just witness to an astoundingly beautiful and sophisticated molecular machinery which sustains perception of my life and orients itself to contain the essence of information in my environment, as if the atoms of my DNA sense through atomic forces the sum total of all energy and information in my environment, and encodes pathways to transfer the information between forms of matter and energy to manifest the majesty and vision of light living within matter, as if it were a crystal substance within which many waves of photonic energy endlessly reflect, permutate through interactivity with all molecular structures of appropriate harmonic wavelength.
Future humans.
A common suggestion, yeah. There's arguments against it, basically that the morphology of the eyes is highly suspect. Specifically, if humans had eyes as big as they are said to have, the resulting ocular cavity would be huge and take up a lot of room for the brain. There's so much back and forth here, I can't really be a comprehensive source, but the highlight reel of counterclaims that I'm familiar with is that there's no way to know anything about truly alien biology. It's possible their brains can have much different shapes, more efficient designs, and far denser neural structures, so bigger isn't necessarily better. Others that we can't be sure their eyes are round within their skulls. They don't seem to have pupils like we do, or irises. They could have different shaped eyes and see the world quite differently from how we do. Others suggest that their heads are proportionally larger, or even the backs of their heads are elongated. That last part you get with people saying human groups who practice skull elongation are trying to mimic their star patrons. Similar complaints about them having big heads and small necks. That such a design would lead to all kinds of issues in Earth gravity. Others point out to it as suggestive they have evolved to live in low gravity, probably artificial environments. Or again that their muscle and bone structures are superior to humanity. If they're evolved humans, that they've moved past the problems endemic to bipedal design, namely age-related neck and knee issues. The real tricky bit, as I imagine it, would be hybrids. Since the more human genetics, the more likely they'd have problems. Our eye structure, brain structure, smaller non-elongated skull would arguably cause all kinds of problems.
Half of this thread is fan fiction.
Oh, come on now. This Anon is promising us the 12-fold path towards the truth of human creation, and you're just going to blow him off. We wait, yearning for full disclosure, and here waltzes someone into the thread, practically offering it to us on a silver platter. Why would you dismiss his obvious truth with fan fiction? Yeah, I'm not able to stifle my laughter either. Jokes aside, this is /x/, so it's not like we were going to arrive at any kind of truth or revelation. UFOlogy has always been a bag of mixed nuts. I suppose some of it's psyops, but a good deal of it is just people wanting to believe in something higher than themselves. Who doesn't want to feel special? It becomes part of this phenomenon. In the past, sleep paralysis was attributed to demons or ghosts. In some cases, even vampires, though that was more the Great New England Vampire Panic back in the 1800s. An outbreak of consumption, and people tried to create a supernatural explanation, so obviously vampires were sitting on their chests at night and draining their blood or vitality. Today, there's a largely secular sci-fi explanation that it's aliens. Is it real? Is it bunk? I don't know. I've suffered sleep paralysis myself for years, and it can be pretty wild. But I also know the brain loves to make up stories. Personally, I like hearing about the evolution of sleep paralysis lore or mythology, depending on if you're wearing the believer or skeptic cap, which has always been a big part of abduction stories, but of course is not always involved. Plenty of stories where people encounter craft and beings and are taken inside. Betty and Barney Hill, for instance, were driving, not sleeping, though I guess the weak point in their story is the use of hypnosis. I still like seeing the gradual shift in how people perceive aliens, both within ufology and in pop culture. The Pulp magazine images were pretty neat, and I'd love to read some of those stories.
I, for one, miss that the Nordics or other human-looking aliens rarely come up these days. Also, the Men in Black. Nowadays, when you hear about the Men in Black, it's just a catch-all for government spooks in suits, and not the robotic moving humanoids with stilted language who can read your thoughts.
If Nordics are screening images, then this would make sense since we have become acclimated to their actual forms. Men in Black as artificial constructs would have eventually outlived its usefulness also, though they were captured on photo a few years ago. Pic-related. What's especially unusual in these phenomena is how people process it. They can be skeptical and pragmatic and disbelieve most everything or believe nearly all of it, including clearly imaginative elements. Like, for example, dozens of kinds of visiting aliens when nearly everyone has not seen even a single UFO. I've studied the evidence for years, and it adds up. A single jet arriving and doing general and simple operations evolving over the decades towards specific operations involving humans. Looking at the mass of UFO and abduction reports, generally they tell one continuous and evolving story that becomes more informative and detailed as time goes on. Even to the point that if someone makes up an account, we can easily dismiss it because it doesn't connect to any other account. There are distinct patterns here from roughly the 1850s until today, with a discrete and identifiable evolution. We only in the next wave now, we don't need Nordics and Space Brothers like we did in the 1950s.
Why would the aliens need the U.S. government to be silent? How could informing the public pose an obstacle to the aliens, if they are so much more advanced than we are? It would not pose an obstacle, but it would create an undesirable outcome for them. It would cause a shock followed by total chaos, especially if it was revealed that they possessed the ability to masquerade as humans. You wouldn't know who to trust. Total chaos means the planet and its livestock, which is what they see us as, would go up in flames and they'd lose something that they've been heavily invested in for quite a number of years. Instead, what you have is controlled chaos and crisis management so that they can maintain a tight grip on us covertly. Loose enough to keep us divided, confused, docile and unsuspecting under the illusion of freedom, but not tight enough to make us self-terminate or unite us against them. They are a dying breed and are pretty much living off of us like parasites. They need us, just as you need oxygen, animals, plants, or minerals to survive. But now, since their time is running out, they have no choice but to cause a series of crises and reduce the population to a manageable size, after which they'll start taking over overtly, presenting themselves as the enlightened saviors of humanity and blaming us for all the problems that they caused in the first place. They'll assimilate and unite us, forcing us into an interstellar war against other races they see as a threat, peddling the same old lie that it's to protect freedom and democracy or to civilize savages. As far as dissidents go, anyone who sticks to their guns or attempts to point out any of the above in the not-so-distant future will be handled in a variety of ways or talked into submission, again, allowing a degree of freedom and conveniences to keep us passive and content enough, so we do not off ourselves or rebel en masse against them, because they need us for sustenance.
I was in telepathic contact with the Greys on Friday. They told me a few things. They know that the universe is a simulation. It is fact for them as incontrovertible as that the sun is not the center of the universe. They are aware of the material and energy dichotomy of the universe, and despite their material technology, they are highly psychic and energy-based. The simulation is physical, but it's also mental, like a dream happening inside a greater mind outside this universe. We are very close to understanding that the universe is a simulation and learning the rules of how to hack it and manipulate it, as they have. They want open contact with us so that they can help us understand the dangers. The dangers are real, much more real than nuclear weapons. We could literally crash the universe with the wrong move. The plague was an experiment in harnessing the power of mass collective mental energy. There are going to be more and bigger crises, but behind the details of all of them, they want to build us into one mass collective mental force. This is part of their plans to break out of the simulation. They believe that the fate of the universe is everyone's personal responsibility. They can heal mental disorders simply by giving people the right sequence of thoughts to consider. It's like extremely advanced cognitive behavioral therapy. They break the speed of light by exploiting some bugs, no different from a video game. What happens if they travel 1,000 years, and 1,000 years later that light gets back to their home world, breaking causality? Not sure, it might crash the whole system. But they intend to be out of here by then. They are going to start inviting people to visit them in mass numbers. There will be tens or hundreds of thousands giving the same stories very soon. We're moving into the next phase of contact, and they want to make open contact soon. They don't mind me sharing any of this. They say the time for secrecy is coming to an end.
We live in the shadow and under the influence of a hyperdimensional species that feeds off of our misery and confusion. It siphons and feeds on the essence excreted by our negative emotions. For example, fear, hate, and loneliness. They use interdimensional, synthetic or bioengineered beings, cyborgs, greys, and humans who have sold out to them, to do their dirty work in order to manipulate us into compliance. They are descendants of what is commonly known as reptiles or dinosaurs who were temporarily removed from this planet. Conquest, self-preservation, and flight or fight is their modus operandi, with a face value, service to others. Pretending to serve the whole, while ultimately serving themselves. Their evolution is entirely predatorial, parasitic and dependent on the heavy lifting of humans and the ecosystem of this planet in general. They believe they own the planet and the human species, which they claim is the product of their own making. Certain factions within the bloodline have been opposed to this throughout the ages, but ultimately they don't really care. There are countless planets similar to Earth, but very few come close to sustaining the range of life forms that this planet does. It has something to do with the properties of the magnetic field, which I'm not qualified enough to explain. As far as they are concerned, Earth is their home and a crown jewel, which they plan to take over openly after the necessary vibrational, technobiological, geopolitical and geological, post-solar flare, changes take place.
Last year in mid-August I was sleeping on the couch in my living room since it's the coolest part of my house. As I was doing since late July, I woke up sometime after 3 a.m. paralyzed and see the back of this short guy, shoulder as high as my counters that are waist height to me, in a black jumpsuit gliding into my kitchen. Not only was he gliding, but also making running motions with his arms. I lost sight of him at the stove where my vision was blocked. I'm convinced that this wasn't a hallucination because the kitchen light was on and the thing was opaque. No light was coming through him and I couldn't see anything. The counters or contents on them, though the figure. I'm not sure if this is connected, but I did see a strange red light do odd flight patterns a week and a half before on garbage night when I was heading back to my door. It blinked in, flew in a level circle 3 times, stopped, drifted north and blinked out. Oh, and I had a weird dream a week after seeing the jumpsuit guy. I was laying in bed, not my bed. And then next thing I was being dragged and moved through a series of arches with alternating flashing coloured lights. And then I woke up again, paralysed, feeling like there was someone at the foot of the couch. There weren't any malicious vibes about the presence. Almost something between concern and professional indifference.
Be me. I live in a lakeside house with a bedroom upstairs. Would wake up many nights in a row to the sound of a loud ringing in my ears. I would see a red glow in front of my window above the lake. A few nights in a row, would wake up to sleep paralysis with the ringing intensifying. One night, the sleep paralysis was intense, almost painful. Woke up with a metallic taste in my mouth. Would no longer wake up in the middle of the night, start to have weird dreams. In a room in a red glow, mouth opened with caliper-like instruments. Mouth filled with water and what looked like a battery. Spinning inside the water in my mouth, I think it turned clockwise. Develop health problems soon after. Screw you, aliens.
They're real, but they're not aliens. They're more like spirit intermediaries or wardens for us. We're in like a hospital or a prison, or both, and they basically guide us and stop us from leaving. All my experiences have led me to this conclusion. They have never hurt me, but they do knock me out and relocate me when I'm in the wrong place, and sometimes they bring me to what appears to be visitors or upper management. Time doesn't exist for them, and they won't come down in Silvercraft. They'll come in the darkness of night from unseen corners of reality to keep you safe and keep others safe from you. Have fun.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.